this is Dr. Jones. She completed a bachelor's degree in psychology at Utah State University in Utah before going on to do a PhD in psychology at Brigham Young University in a cognitive and behavioral neuroscience track, specifically studying sleep. Dr. Jones' primary work during grad school was understanding if the brain functioned differently at night during sleep for specific groups of people. Her first study compared individuals with and without insomnia, and her second study compared individuals with and without suicidal ideation. Following grad school, she began working at URMC in the psychiatry department as a postdoctoral fellow, continuing to study sleep as it related to suicidal ideation. Dr. Jones' main focus now is how poor sleep makes it harder to manage emotions and how that difficulty can increase vulnerability to suicidal. And she's going to present to us about sleep.
Thank you. So come on in. Yeah, so like she said, Dr. Jones recently got married. So this is my husband, Antonio. So in the process of changing my name, Dr. Rodriguez, but I'm still in that in-between phase. So like she said, I've been studying sleep for the last about 8 years. And I enjoy it a lot. The more I study it, the more I don't know about it. Because there's a lot to know about sleep, this thing that we do naturally and we don't necessarily put much thought into sometimes. So we're going to talk a little bit about sleep and how it relates specifically in kind of the college age experience and finals week and how to maximize all of your efforts. So we are just going to go through some basic principles of sleep. But first, I kind of want to start out with, we have two scenarios. You have a student A on the left, who potentially is spending about 6 hours studying for an exam, up late, and getting less than 6 hours of sleep. And then you got student on the right, who maybe studies 3 to 4 hours and gets about 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. On average, what do you think their outcomes are, test-wise, class-wise? What do you think? Any initial thoughts? Yeah, Anthony.
The one that gets more sleep is sleeping better.
And why do you think that?
She had better cognitive functioning when she wakes up, better thought process, thinking, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, that is spot on. I mean, first off, I'm doing a talk about sleep, so that's probably like your first like hint as to, yeah, the person who sleeps tends to have better outcomes. But that is the reality, that the individuals who on average sleep the amount that they're supposed to, even if they're studying for less time, tend to do better on average. So just because of how sleeping can influence and affect your cognitive functioning and other aspects. Okay. Now I want you to look at these statements and turn to a neighbor, talk about them. True or false? Any of these statements? What do you think? Any of them true or false? Really, you can turn to a neighbor, just like say your 4 thoughts.
You said my thoughts. Actually, what are your thoughts? What's your name, or what's there? It's possible.
Excuse for not happening before
That is a good story. Yes.
this is out of
I was like, yeah, but like, well, freak, yeah. It shouldn't affect us, or it shouldn't sound like some.
Okay, so I've given you a couple minutes to kind of think through your initial responses to this. So, number 1, you can catch up on sleep later. What are you thinking? True or false? False. Okay, we've got some false, we've got some true. Okay, so this case, it actually is false. So, the idea behind this and the reason why it's false is that you can't ever fully recover from lost sleep. That sleep debt is not recoverable. You can partially have recovery to the repairing your tissues and cells or different things like that. But once you've lost sleep, it's lost. Like, it's not like you're making up for lost sleep on the weekends necessarily. So just thinking about it in sleep terms, we consider that a lost night. So the more sleep you lose, the more impact it can have, because that does build up and that does become problematic, that chronic use. Okay, what about number 2? Number 2, true or false? Some people only need 4 to 5 hours of sleep. Okay, so I'm getting some false and I'm getting a true. Okay, this actually technically is true. So some people do only need 4 to 5 hours of sleep. Do you want to know how many people in the population that actually is, though? Very small. Exactly. It is less than 1%. So less than 1% actually has a short sleeper gene, that they don't need more than 4 to 5 hours of sleep. But some of us like to think that we are the short sleeper gene pool people, that we think we're the ones that are fine on 4 to 5 hours of sleep. But what's interesting is that most of the time you underestimate how impaired you actually are from lack of sleep. Yes.
Is that because their sleep is more efficient?
I mean, genetically, it's like essentially, yes, the sleep that they are getting. So they would need to have the 4 to 5 hours of sleep. So they could have pretty efficient sleep in that 4 to 5 hours. They just don't need the 7 to 8 hours of sleep that most other people need. So in some sense, yes, more efficient. But if they don't get their 4 to 5 hours of sleep, then also they're not as efficient as anyone who's not getting their 7 to 8 hours of sleep. So it could be kind of comparable. And yeah, most individuals underestimate it. And chronic restriction can affect anything from your mood to your appetite, to your neurotransmitters, to your hormones, to all of your body systems. Okay. Number 3, all-nighters help you study. No. In practice, do you think that's true or false? And then in reality, is it true or false? False, true, okay. So again, we've got kind of a mixed bag here of like, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. So what we know is that when you don't sleep all night, so if you pull an all-nighter and are studying, your memory consolidation drops significantly. So your ability to retain information. So yes, you might end up being able to cram a lot of information in your mind, but your ability to retain that information past any point past that, not great. So it doesn't necessarily, I guess it could be true if you're just looking for next day effects, but do you really want to spend that many hours doing something that only lasts you to the next day? So then myth number 4, caffeine sometimes doesn't affect sleep. You guys think that's true? Okay. This one is also false. So caffeine is essentially, it blocks the buildup of adenosine in your body. So adenosine builds up in your body that sends you the signal, I need to sleep. And so caffeine blocks that. And even if you are the type of person who caffeine doesn't work super effectively for, there still can be effects in the depth of sleep that you end up getting. So it may not affect your ability to fall asleep or your ability to stay asleep, but it might affect how deep of sleep you get. So caffeine typically has half-life of 5 to 6 hours and a quarter life of about 10 to 12 hours. So even 12 hours after drinking caffeine, you can have about a quarter of the caffeine still in your body functioning. So can still affect your sleep hours later. So these are a couple things that sometimes we're not necessarily aware of. And I think as a college student, I was not aware of the reality of some of these things. So I just wanted to point these out kind of just at the beginning. So the next thing I want to talk about is what's actually happening kind of in your brain and in your body while you're sleeping. What do we think the functions of sleep and what it's actually doing are? So first off, you have repairs that are occurring. So you have repairs in your synapses, you have repairs in your tissues, in your cells. So all of those things are occurring while you're sleeping. So if you aren't sleeping, is that occurring? Not as effectively. No. So it's either not occurring or it's not occurring effectively. Okay. The next thing we have is that it's strengthening specific things, memories, while you sleep. Sleep is a really critical component for creating and storing long-term memories. So sleep consolidation often occurs not necessarily in just one stage of sleep, but primarily in your dream stage of sleep, so your REM stage of sleep. And that's a really important part of sleep. Okay. It also regulates several systems. So sleep helps you regulate your mood. It helps regulate toxin levels. So your glymphatic system helps to remove the toxins that build up in your brain and in your body across the day. And so sleep is the time of day that that removal occurs. It also regulates your hormones. So your hormones that regulate your appetite, your leptin and your ghrelin, those are regulated by sleep as well. So all of these things, all of these systems and processes are happening, and these are functions of what sleep is doing for us. So again, when you think about not sleeping, these are all the things that are maybe taking a hit when we're not sleeping. And we never fully recover from the not sleeping. Okay. So some questions for you. How do you decide when you're going to sleep? What goes into those decisions for you guys? Yeah, Lily.
When I've got enough work done that I can feel like I can sleep.
Okay, so your decision is based on tasks being done. Okay, kind of end of day tasks. Anyone else? How do you decide when you're going to sleep? Yeah,
It's 10:30.
when it's 10:30. Okay, so you have a set time that you've decided that's the time to sleep. Any other thoughts? Yeah. Well, you can't stay awake when you're so tired that you are non-functional anymore. That, eyes need to be closed, need to be or not vertical anymore. Yeah. So these are all cues that we give ourselves or our bodies, that to sleep, right? So any other cues that indicate for you that it's time to sleep? So for Lonnie, she's talking about she can't stay awake any longer. The cue is eyes don't stay open. What other cues do you have? Yeah.
Right. Like I read something that actually like a term I think it's
Yeah. So your cognitive functioning, your ability to think is a cue that maybe it's time to sleep. Okay. Any other maybe obvious cues? It's dark. I mean, are you normally trying to sleep in the bright daylight? Probably not. That's not the typical time to sleep. So other cues like that. Other things, how you feel. So how does it feel when you're ready to sleep? How do you typically feel? What's happening in your body? You're tired. Like, yeah, just hands down, you're tired. And that could be physical fatigue, like muscles not functioning. That could be brain not functioning, but there's a tiredness to it. Okay. So, how do you know whether and how well you slept? So, how have you decided? Yeah.
if I feel rested when my alarm goes off, or if I wake up naturally.
Okay.
But if my alarm goes off and I still feel like groggy and like almost dizzy when I get up and turn it off, then I know that it's there.
Okay. Okay. So, feeling groggy, not awake, that to you is a cue maybe you didn't sleep enough versus feeling alert when you wake up. Any other thoughts? How do you know when you've slept enough? Yeah, Mohammed.
Combination of how many hours we sleep for and how you feel.
Okay. Yeah. So you kind of do the calculation of knowing, okay, I probably slept about this much and this is how I feel, which, you might say, okay, based on how much I slept and how I feel, I probably did pretty decent last night. Probably got a pretty decent amount of sleep. One thing that's interesting with sleep research is that one of the key factors or key things that somebody reports on how they feel like they slept is literally just how they feel when they wake up. So it doesn't necessarily matter as much how much sleep you're getting as well as how you feel. Because they had participants, a group of researchers had some participants. They lied to them about how much sleep they got. So the participants were in a room without a clock, without any kind of necessary like knowledge of what time it was when they went to bed and when they woke up. And they were asked to like, how long do you think you slept? How well, like, do you feel like you slept? And the biggest predictor of like their actual sleep was how they felt in the morning. But if they lied to them and said, oh, you slept for 12 hours or 9 hours or 10 hours or whatever they said, that was like a larger amount, then they reported feeling better. So they were lied to. They actually reported feeling better. But it's just really interesting on like how you feel can be influenced by the number, but also waking up groggy can influence whether or not you feel like you slept well. Individuals who wake up groggy every day could potentially still be sleeping really well. They're just, when they're waking up at a particular point in their cycle. And there's also this concept called sleep inertia. So when you wake up, it's actually really normal to feel groggy. So most people expect that in order to have a good night of sleep, you have to wake up feeling really good. That's not necessarily the case. So it's actually pretty typical to take about half an hour to wake up fully during the day. So another kind of cool fact. So let's talk about the sleep processes that occur. So how sleep actually works. So your body has a circadian rhythm. This is your 24-hour clock. And your body has a clock that works for a lot of different systems. So it's not just your sleep that's on this kind of 24-hour circadian rhythm, but there's other systems like your melatonin, your cortisol, your body temperature even, that are all on a clock as well. So you have about a little over 24-hour clock that at certain periods in the day, your body starts to send signals, produce melatonin. Melatonin production often peaks about 3 to 4 hours before you go to bed. So melatonin production starts. And so the signals for your body to actually sleep start way before you actually are ready to sleep. So if you're using caffeine or any other substance to help yourself stay awake, you're potentially offsetting all of those natural circadian rhythms. Okay, so it's our internal clock. It's regulated, specifically the sleep circadian rhythm is regulated by light. So in the morning, light filters through your eyes and goes back to a little brain region called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And that is what signals the reduction of melatonin. And it's essentially kind of like an off-on switch to now where all of the wake systems in your body turn on. And so light production is really important to helping you wake up. Okay. We also have this concept of social jet lag with your circadian rhythm. And this is where individuals stay up late because of social tasks or work tasks or other things. And now their circadian rhythm is experiencing kind of this jet lag to where they're not on a very good cycle, 24-hour cycle, because of the tasks that are occurring at night. Okay, so this is our first process. Your first process is your circadian rhythm. Then you have the second process that is your sleep drive, or your sleep homeostat is another term that's used to describe it. And this is where your adenosine, like I talked about before, starts to build up in your nerves and your cells. And over time, the adenosine essentially creates a pressure or a need to sleep. Just like you have a pressure or a need to eat food across the day or drink water, there are pressures to do that. Same kind of thing. You have a drive to sleep. This is what leads you to ultimately feeling like I can't keep my eyes open anymore, is your sleep drive. So your circadian rhythm is the 24-hour cycle, biological cycle, and then your sleep drive increases across the day, and then it decreases as you sleep. Both of those processes are very necessary in order for you to sleep normally. Okay. So this is very much offset by caffeine. This is what a sleep cycle or the sleep cycles at night typically look like. For an average person, This is called a hypnogram. So it's what we use to describe the stages of sleep that an individual goes in and how long they're in the stages of sleep. So across the left, you can see the different stages of sleep, starting with somebody being awake, and then REM at the top, which REM is the last stage of sleep that you go through. So we want these systems to be regular and predictable. So when your circadian rhythm and your sleep drive are working the way they're supposed to be, this looks pretty typical to where you kind of start in stage 1, and then you go to stage 2, and then you go to stage 3, and then you come back out of it to REM. And each of these stages play an important role in how you feel. So your stage 1 sleep, this is your lightest stage of sleep. You spend about 20 to 25% of the night in stage 1 sleep. So across your sleep cycles, it's about a quarter of the night. And this is the stage of sleep where you might not feel asleep. You might still be aware of things in your surroundings. You might still be hearing things, seeing things. It's like a disjointed, maybe dreaming, maybe not kind of experience. So that's your stage 1 sleep. Then your deeper stage of sleep is stage 2. And you spend about 40 to 50% of the night in stage 2 sleep. So this is a pretty stable stage of sleep. It's not the deepest stage, but it's still important. It's kind of your just main amount of sleep that you get. And then stage 3 is your deepest stage of sleep. So this is the one that it's hard to wake somebody up from stage 3 sleep usually. So you sometimes have to shake them. You have to use other methods to wake somebody up from your deep sleep. Deep sleep tends to be what feels the most restorative. So when you're getting your stage 3 sleep, you wake up feeling pretty good because you've gotten a lot of the really stable, really slow wave. Your brain activity is synchronized in very slow waves, and it feels really good to your brain and your body. And you only spend about 10 to 15% of the night in stage 3 sleep. And what's also interesting is that most of your stage 3 sleep occurs in the first half of the night. So if you're up late and you're not falling asleep, and circadian rhythm wise, you typically need to fall asleep around 10 p.m., but you're up till 1 a.m., you're potentially missing that window of deep sleep, which leaves you feeling like you've gotten restorative sleep. So it makes sense when you wake up the next day that you potentially don't feel so good because that deep sleep has potentially been missing. So you've gone through your stage 1, your stage 2, stage 3. So you've been in your deepest stage of sleep, and now you're out of that stage of sleep to your rapid eye movement sleep. And this is where your body enters a state of semi-paralysis. So your muscles are mostly paralyzed, but your eyes move, which is why we call it rapid eye movement sleep. So you see rapid eye movements during this stage of sleep. Most of the time, people report their most vivid dreams during this stage. This is also where most of your memory reconstruction and consolidation occurs, is during REM. Your brain is the most similar to being awake out of any of the stages of sleep, even though you're still asleep, but your brain is highly, highly active during this stage of sleep. And so it's really similar to wake, and it's also almost the easiest to wake up out of. So often people will wake up from dreams, or this is why you wake up remembering a dream initially, is because REM is similar to wake. Your brain is already pretty active, already pretty wake, so it's not that hard to make that transition into the wake system. What's also interesting, it doesn't actually have it on this hypnogram, but it's typical to wake up a couple times a night. That's actually very normal. What is abnormal is if you're waking up a couple times a night and it takes you more than 5 to 10 minutes to fall asleep again. So if it's taking you long periods of time to fall asleep after waking up, that's abnormal. But having a couple wake ups during the night, not unusual. That's actually still very healthy. You can have a very healthy sleep. Okay, so you sleep in these cycles that are about 90 minutes. So the stage 1 through 3 are your non-rapid eye movement sleep. And then you have your rapid eye movement sleep that's kind of at the end. And your deep sleep occurs in the first half of the night for the most part, and your REM sleep occurs in the second half of the night for the most part. So, again, if you're now thinking, okay, you're maybe going to bed when you're supposed to be, but you're getting up earlier than you normally are getting up, you might be missing out on rapid eye movement sleep, which is important for memory consolidation and some of those things. So just keeping an eye on what parts of sleep you might be missing if you're not going to bed. Did you have a question? Or is that that's just a scratch your head? No, that's just fine. So again, waking is normal. And if you wake up, like what Lily described of waking up groggy, potentially that's due to waking up mid-cycle. So I don't think all of us sleep the perfect amount of time to potentially end exactly at a 90-minute cycle. Most people average a 90-minute cycle. Everyone's a little bit different, but I don't think all of us are sleeping those exact amounts to where you're waking up at the end of your 90-minute cycle. But if you can figure out kind of what your cycle length is, and if you can figure out a way to wake up at the end of your cycle, that's a good way to wake up and feel more alert, is waking up at the end of that cycle. Okay. Any questions so far? Yes.
I was just wondering, is this graph plotting any particular measurement, or is it just, well,
It's just qualitative more so. It's like it's amount of time essentially in each of these stages of sleep, and that's all it's really meant to capture, is just a visual of seeing, yeah, when you're doing the actual sleep scoring of somebody's sleep, there are more quantitative like measurements that it's actually measuring, but in this image it's more qualitative. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about some strategies. If you're studying for finals week, how do you maximize your sleep to help your studying efforts? Okay, so number one, having a consistent wake time. This is the number one factor that helps with stabilizing your sleep and helps with having a more consistent sleep schedule is waking up at the same time. Even more so than having the same or consistent bedtime. When you wake up is going to have more of an impact than necessarily when you go to bed. Okay. And this is also even on weekends. So if you want to maximize your sleep, you get up at the same time, which I think we're pretty resistant to weekends because we like sleeping in on weekends, or we like trying to potentially do the catch up that doesn't really catch us up on sleep. But that is number one, what I would say. Wake up at the same time. Number two, protect your sleep window. So the amount of time that you're giving yourself to sleep every night, think of it as a class or something important that you can't miss. Protect that window. It's important to get enough sleep. It has long-term impacts on your memory, not only as a student, but it has long-term impacts on your body's function. And there are plenty of studies out there indicating that it has long-term impacts on how long you live and how healthy you live. Quality of life at the end of life impacted by sleep at younger ages. So they followed people longitudinally, and your likelihood of having severe health issues decreases dramatically if you can get consistent sleep. So interesting. So as far as protecting your sleep window, this is identifying at least an 8-hour period of time a night that you can consistently give yourself an opportunity to sleep. Okay. This helps support your memory. It helps support your learning. So this is something that I think is really important if you want your studying to actually have a potentially higher impact. Spending less time studying with a lot stronger impact, getting enough sleep. Okay, number three, to time your caffeine. So if you're going to have caffeine, time it to where it's not going to have as much of an impact on your sleep. So typically the recommendation is not having caffeine after 2 p.m. But if you can limit that even sooner, that's even better. But 2 p.m. is like the recommended cutoff for caffeine consumption if you don't want it to potentially impact your later sleep and depth of sleep. Okay, number 4 is morning light exposure can actually help a lot as well. So if you have a hard time getting up within the first 10 to 30 minutes of being awake, expose yourself to morning light or to as close to natural light as you can get. Because I know in the winter, that's difficult when the sun is hidden behind clouds, but trying to get as close to natural light as you can as soon as possible after waking up. And that will help your system start functioning a lot sooner and a lot faster. Okay. The 5th is having kind of a wind down routine. So this means having something consistent that you do every night before you go to bed to help you fall asleep, to help reduce the anxieties from the day or whatever the stressors are. Often you also, if you have difficulty sleeping, taking a warm shower before you go to bed is really helpful because it lowers your core body temperature. And your body temperature being lowered is a signal to your brain that it's time to sleep. So lower body temperature, this is also why you feel really tired in that 2 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon range, is because your body temperature drops naturally during that range. And so that's also something that occurs naturally, but at night, we'd like to maximize that, by taking a warm shower, doing something like that. Also avoiding light. So having lower light or warmer lights, essentially not your blue light at night, because that does signal to your brain that it's still daytime and you should be awake. So reducing your blue light. If you have difficulty sleeping, potentially because of stressors, it's maybe kind of listing out or creating a list of all the things that you need to do the next day so you don't have to think about them or the things that you're worried about. Having a separate list of that can also help, like falling asleep. So as part of the nighttime routine. And then if you're going to nap, so napping is not necessarily recommended. It's recommended to give yourself enough time at night to sleep. But if you're going to nap, be smart about how you nap. Okay. So this is ideally going to be 10 to 20 minutes max. So something that is enough to rest your body, recharge a little bit, but that you won't be left feeling groggy when you wake up. So also ideally before 3 p.m. So if you're going to take naps, smart napping is usually before 3 p.m. because then it allows your body to build up enough adenosine again and that sleep drive so that you can sleep at night. Another thing with napping is to get up immediately. So some of this is really difficult to do if you're taking a nap because you want to potentially lie there longer, but 10 to 20 minutes and get up immediately. And it can be a really good boost. And even napping after you learn things can improve your memory of the things. So having some study sessions across the morning and then taking a 10 to 20 minute nap can potentially boost your memory of the things that you did study. So those are some things that can potentially help. But what I want to hear from you guys is, what are the barriers for you in getting sleep? Or are there any barriers? Yeah, Lonnie.
Like for me, as an RA, when I'm on duty, like we have walkouts that are supposed to be from like 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. So sometimes, like when I'm working, instead of just going to sleep, I actually stay up so that I make sure that I can hear phone.
Okay. So yeah, sometimes the barrier is something that we can't necessarily fix or we can't address, is that you have to be awake for some specific reason. And if that's work, then that is the case. And that's where you might want to maximize your ability to nap. That if you can't give yourself enough sleep and that's a barrier, then trying to potentially have something that helps offset that in the case of like a short nap. Any other barriers? Yes.
Physical activity, I feel like, I have dance meeting from 7 to 11 at university, so like I don't know, I guess at the time people would be winding down your soul activity and then like if like go to the gym or something at that time, so I don't even think that's a barrier.
Yeah, I would say so. And just to make sure I'm clear, that's 7 to 11 p.m.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, there is a lot of research on timing of exercise before sleep. And if it's moderate activity, then typically it's okay up until about your sleep time. But if you're doing anything intense, often it then can have an impact on your sleep, which I don't know if you feel that or it affects that, but it can definitely impact the depth of sleep that individuals get and the quality of sleep of exercising vigorously right before bed versus so typically the recommendation is like 2 to 3 hours before bed. But that is a barrier. If that's something that, again, you can't necessarily change that or choose to do that. But I think then it's important to have a wind down after that, like give yourself time to wind down and your body to relax before sleep. Yeah. Any other barriers? Yeah.
So my hours change throughout the year.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, that is definitely a barrier. I agree. Anything else? Yeah.
Just like the pressure to get more work done, like even if it's the time that you've chosen. Even when like I'll set a little alarm that goes off at 10 p.m. and it says go to bed and I just ignore it because I'm like, but I'm not done. So I'd say that's a big barrier for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Not having all the things done that you want to get done is a barrier. I think sometimes we just don't want to go to bed, you know? I think we want to stay awake. We want to do other things. Yeah. 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 And with those types of things, the barrier could be kind of having a time suck. So you get sucked in, and then before you know it, a lot of time has passed. And now you've been on your phone, potentially also exposed to more light than you might need to be at night. But then, yeah, also just the amount of time that you can spend on that. Yeah, those are all potentially barriers. So, how can you potentially alter or get past or bypass those barriers? So, the barriers that keep you from sleeping or giving yourself an opportunity to sleep, how do you bypass those? I just want you to think about it. Okay. Like, are there things you can personally do to bypass the barriers? Or just bypass one barrier? Because there might be multiple. Okay. So, what I want you to do is I want you to think of kind of a sleep plan, something you could do, change or improve your sleep. We're at the end of the semester, taking finals, finishing last projects, but also just thinking about, moving into the future. What are things that you can do? So, as far as wake time, maybe that's something you want to adjust. What will your consistent wake time be? Or your sleep window? What will your sleep window be? Or even just picking one habit. So if it's not your wake time, if it's not your sleep window, what is one sleep habit that you could potentially commit to? Just try it out for maybe 7 days, the next week, until the end of finals that you can commit to. So turn to a neighbor and just chat for a minute about like, okay, what could you potentially do? What would you realistically do? Before 3 p.m. More naps.
Yes, it's a lot of fast, that's right. That sounds good.
Okay, I've given you a minute to maybe think about something that you could alter. And hopefully, as I mean, we've kind of discussed and the things that I presented, hopefully there are things that you can take away and things that you can use moving forward, that don't just apply to being in school, but that are principles that actually help sleep improve at any point in your life. So that is everything that I have. Do you have any questions? Yes, Lana.
One question I have is like, for taking a nap, like your recommended times and can. But if you find yourself in a situation where, like, you find yourself like habitually like oversleeping like past that time, would it be better to just sleep for a full sleep cycle and wake up?
What I would recommend is sleeping somewhere in a position that is less comfortable. Because ideally, the purpose of the nap isn't to go through like a full sleep cycle. So often, what individuals will do is maybe lay on their back on the ground and hold something in your hand. So hold something in your hand, and typically after about 10 to 20 minutes, you're falling asleep and the thing is fallen out of your hand, and it often wakes you up or something like that. So having something to where it's not comfortable enough for you to want to lay there for longer than about 20 minutes. But you can fall asleep because you're so tired that you need the nap, that you could sleep there for probably 20 minutes, but that you're not going to sleep longer. And only you know kind of what that would look like. But yeah, good question. Multiple naps during the day? Again, the recommendation is like you give yourself enough sleep at night. So it's not recommended to have multiple naps throughout the day. Ideally, you're not taking any naps throughout the day. But there are circumstances that if you're falling asleep at the wheel or you're falling asleep and like unable to function, that yes, take a nap. But most of the time, like try and limit the amount that you're sleeping during the day to maximize the amount you're sleeping at night. So like, it's a fine balancing act. Getting enough sleep to help yourself function, but not interrupting your night of sleep, because it's not your sleep that you get during the day isn't the same as the sleep that you get during the night. So it doesn't help you as much. Yes. Start Adam.
Sleep masks, like, how do they affect, I guess, like, your reaction in like when you wake up? Because normally, if you have the windows and the blinds open, like a gradual increase in light, probably. How does the sleep mask thing?
Yeah, the sleep mask can prevent that. So it prevents the gradual increase of light, which for individuals who wake up really easily to light, so some are more susceptible than others and respond really easily, the sleep mask is helpful because then they can train their circadian rhythm to wake up at the time they want to. But for somebody who, if you wear the sleep mask and now you sleep through everything, I don't know that wearing the sleep mask is really like the best method for you. But yeah, good question. Yeah, Mom.
What if you were to like get 5 or like 6 hours of sleep and it took a bunch of smart naps, but
Is there a way to get more than 5 to 6 hours of sleep at night?
really like as effective as like getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep?
No, it's not. No. So sleeping solid amounts of time at night is far more effective for you and your body than doing a lot of napping during the day. You have another follow-up question?
What about polyphasic?
Polyphasic sleep. Yeah, you care to expound on that for me?
Like when you like are up for a certain amount of hours when you sleep for a certain time.
Oh, That is actually considered a sleep disorder. So if you sleep in 4 hour or less increments throughout the day, that is considered, it is a sleep disorder. So it's disordered sleep. It's not regular. You're not getting your typical experience of sleep. So would not recommend, since it seems like that might be an experience that some of you are potentially having, but would not recommend. Yeah, Lonnie.
Like, we talked about, like not getting enough sleep, but are there any sort of considerable instances, yeah, like too much sleep?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a U curve. So not enough sleep, problematic. Too much sleep, also problematic. Most people are not on the too much sleep side of things. So it's not as heavily like broadcast, but yeah, too much sleep also potentially, then you end up feeling almost worse as well. So it has effects on your functioning. Yeah.
Is it possible to skip phases? Like, could you go from like 1 to 3? Or is that like maybe you need to go from 2?
You don't typically skip phases. You might spend very minimal amounts of time in a phase. So that is typical or pretty normal. That you might only spend a little bit of time in stage 1 before you move to stage 2. And if you're really sleep deprived, you might get or experience REM rebound to where you might start in REM. But it's not as healthy REM because it's a rebound experience. And so your body doesn't recover quite as well as you would like it to. No, you want to risk it typically. Yeah.
So the treatment, so it's darker, so brown means that's a better. Sleep you on that.
The what you
The dark.
oh, the darker the room, the better sleep you'll get. Typically, yeah. Yeah. So the less light you have in the room, often the deeper sleep you can get because then it won't be interrupted or impacted by light. Yeah.
I know you mentioned earlier, some people can sleep 4 to 5 hours and be like pretty on point. Nikola Tesla, just like a famous anecdote, he would sleep like 2 to 3 hours sometimes. Like, do you think that's he was actually getting sufficient sleep with that? Or
No. No. I think that is actually very typical of really successful businessmen is not sleeping. But what I find is interesting is I wonder how successful or more successful they could have been had they been sleeping more. Because they already were really successful on like the little amount of sleep. But there is a lot of impairment. And there often you see side effects with like emotion regulation and other things that can then impact like relationships and social interaction and other things like that, even if your cognitive functioning is still mostly there and you can do all the business tasks or things you need, there's often pretty detrimental impacts in other areas of your life. So, again, not recommended. Yeah, Mohammed.
In the experiment we talked about earlier with help with like better wake up based on like how they feel.
Mhm.
During the experiment, were they like exposed to sunlight at all, or did they have like the concept of like when light or day was?
Oh, that is a good question. I don't think they were exposed to light. I think they were allowed to wake up naturally. And so I don't believe they were. Yeah. Because they were in a light controlled room. Yeah.
So can the last wake time or sleep window remain the same throughout the whole life?
That's ideal. But if you can, but no, across ages, you do require or need less sleep or different varying amounts of sleep. So as a baby, they need a lot of sleep. Toddlers, children need lots of sleep. There's a lot of development, a lot of physical and brain activity stuff that's happening that they need actually more sleep. And then as that stabilizes at the end of teenage years into young adulthood, then typically from about that, that young adult age to kind of like mid 50s, 60s, about, you kind of need about the same amount of sleep. So the 7 to 9 hours of sleep. And then as you get on the older range, they often don't need as much sleep and they often have more fragmented sleep. And so having these characteristics or trying to keep a stable wake time and a sleep window is a good practice across the life, but those things might change, as you get older. So, yeah, Lily.
Do people have a particular sleep window that is like naturally best for them? Like, is being an early bird or night owl like kind of predetermined by like individual biological differences, or is it just like how we train ourselves?
It's a combination of both, but there is a biological chronotype process that occurs that you naturally have a circadian rhythm where your body wants to fall asleep and wake up. And society wise, it's a little bit harder on night owls to function in society than it is on like the early birds. So night owls tend to miss out on more sleep than people who are early birds, just because the night owls are awake later in the night and then want to be sleeping until later in the morning. But most of the time in society, that's not how we function. Classes are early, work is early, things start earlier than often they want to be awake or their bodies say they should be awake. So often that does play a role in that. But it is very normal to actually have a set kind of chronotype. So some individuals are kind of in between. So we have some that are definitely early birds, some that are definitely late, like night owls, and then you have some that are in between. Finding your window is actually really important. So it's also a sleep disorder if you sleep outside your circadian rhythm, like time period. So people who work night shifts are often sleeping outside their circadian rhythm, and their sleep is usually pretty poor as a result. Yeah.
There's like wake up early, so it's good habit for our health.
Waking up early is a good habit if that's your chronotype, like if that's part of your chronotype, so your natural body going to bed early, waking up early, then yes, that's going to be the healthiest for you. If you're somebody who tends to be up late and you function the best at night and then need to sleep in a little bit later, getting up early is probably not going to be the healthiest thing. Yeah. And you can shift your circadian rhythm. You want to do it in a healthy way. Typically, sleep researchers have you do it in about 15-minute increments across 2 weeks. So 15 minute, move it up 15 minutes, stabilize for 2 weeks, move it up another 15 minutes, stabilize for 2 weeks. So it's a very slow process to try and get your body systems to all align. Yeah. You had a question in the back.
So, a follow-up. How would one determine one's natural sleep cycle?
So often you're going to look for like the cues of like when you naturally want to sleep. So when are the dips in your energy? So do those naturally occur earlier in the night or like earlier in the evening kind of thing, the 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, like that window? Or is your really tired dips occurring after that window? So you're 11, 12, 1 kind of thing. So you can look for those types of cues. You can also look at just cognitive functioning wise. Usually you can tell the difference between do you function and accomplish things quicker and more effectively at one time of night or morning than others. So personally, I've just learned from experience, like experimenting on myself, to where I can get things done at night, but I am way more effective at doing those same things in the morning. And so I can spend 2 hours doing something at night that will only take me 45 minutes in the morning. And because I've kind of done that experiment on myself, I've tried both things and I've just like learned by trial and error that one works way more effectively than others. So that's kind of what I would look for is some of those types of cues and experiment. Oh, I'm sure there is. I am more of like an insomnia researcher than like a circadian rhythm, like basic circadian rhythm kind of thing. So but I would anticipate that yes, there definitely is like a more structured way to do that. Yeah.
Is there anything to remedy kind of like the afternoon slump? Because you said that like it's like, your caffeine should be.
Mhm.
So, is there because you said the temperature naturally drops.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
that's a natural thing that happens, it's if something's kind of compassionate.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So, as far as overcoming your natural, like core body temperature dropping in that afternoon and feeling tired, most of the time, what's recommended is that you schedule something kind of more physical or doing something that actually has you actively moving. Or even if you're studying during that period of time, taking more breaks and physically moving during that time. Because once you get past that window, often your energy rebounds again. You just have to get yourself through that window. And if it's not possible to get yourself through that window, take a 10-minute nap. Like do something, close your eyes for just a little bit, and it will kind of help offset that as well. Yeah, Lily.
What are some of the telltale signs that we're chronically sleep deprived and we need to change something about our habits?
Ooh, telltale signs that you're chronically sleep deprived. How long does it take you to fall asleep when your head hits the pillow? If it takes you less than 5 minutes, probably chronically sleep deprived. So and that's one telltale sign is the amount of time it takes you to fall asleep. Again, it's healthy to fall asleep, but if you're chronically sleep deprived and you fall asleep, you typically are falling asleep in less than 5 minutes. So normal is between 5 and 30 minutes, often 10 and 30 minutes. So anything less than that is you're normally not giving yourself enough time. The other or like things that are indicators of chronic sleep, it's your skin health. So you often will have healthier skin when you're not chronically sleep deprived. And so you might be able to tell by how your skin looks, the elasticity in your skin. Other telltale signs, you just aren't tired all day. So it's normal to feel tired during that like 2 to 4 o'clock window. But if you're perpetually tired throughout the day, often again, that's a cue chronically sleep deprived. So those are a couple of like the first ones off my top of my head. Yeah.
Snoring has a big effect on sleeping quality.
Does what have an effect?
Snore.
Snoring. Oh, okay. So snoring, it depends. So it depends on whether or not the snoring is indicating a potential like sleep disorder problem. So snoring can be an indication of somebody having sleep apnea, which is when you stop breathing at night. And so then you stop breathing, and then your body is needing oxygen. And so then it wakes you up so that you can start breathing again. Snoring is often an indicator of that. As far as, so if you're snoring and that's like the reason or like something that's occurring health wise, then yes, it impacts the quality of your sleep because it's really problematic. But if the snoring is not waking you up, and if the snoring is not as part of having sleep apnea, typically no, it doesn't affect your quality of sleep. So no. Yeah, Lily.
So with setting alarms, a lot of us use our phones as alarms. Where is the ideal place to keep it at night? Like, should we have it super close to us so we can hit snooze as many times as we want, or should we be keeping it across the room so we have to get up and we can't hit snooze?
I think you know yourself the best as far as what will get you out of bed in the morning. As far as the research goes, it's far more effective to just let yourself sleep than to hit snooze. So if you know that you're just going to sleep another 30 minutes, and you have to set all of the alarms and you're going to sleep through them, just sleep the 30 minutes. Because if you can sleep the 30 minutes uninterrupted, that's going to be way better for your health than doing the snooze. So as far as where your phone is placed, if you're somebody who does reach for the snooze, then I would recommend not having it right next to you. So it does force you to get out of bed. There's a lot of really funky devices that people have that some of them are really like torture devices. They have some that you can like have it shock the bed, to wake you up. You can have it where like it vibrates, and the vibration increases in strength to wake you up. Other alarm clocks that are typical kind of as it gets louder or it gets brighter, those ones are actually more effective. If you want one that's really helpful, have something that it mimics natural light. So it mimics the light outside. So in the winter, when there isn't any light, if you have an alarm clock that mimics the natural light, you'll wake up more naturally.
All right, if you guys have for one more question.
Yeah, anything else? These have all been great.
I can ask, what is the number one reason why we should prioritize sleep even when we're young and healthy?
The number one reason? Ooh. To pick just one? I don't know. I don't know. There's lots of reasons to prioritize sleep. Number one, I mean, sleep just makes everything else better. It makes it easier to think. It makes it easier to control emotion. It makes it easier to accomplish goals and tasks and everything. So like it makes things easier. I don't know. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks.
Feel free to grab some